Hello, welcome to Little Piggy, where we take you to the market. Today we're going to be discussing something we shouldn't be discussing for a first episode, and that is the slow, tragic, and excruciatingly painful death of Borders Bookstore. It's quite funny though, not going to lie. So they died in 2011 primarily because they were reluctant to change to meet consumer demands and needs in the market. So we're going to go over to the board, take a look at why that is, and how exactly that happened. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all to the board. This is where we will discuss all of our markets, all of them. But today we're going to be talking about Borders. And we can't talk about Borders without talking about my boy, Big Jeff, Jeffy B from Amazon, who started selling books in 1994 on Amazon.com. He quickly took over a large part of the market because he was selling books very cheaply, even occasionally at a loss. But we all know about Jeff. Let's hear about what Borders did. Borders had the brilliant choice to redirect all of their online sales from Borders.com to Amazon.com. They did this for years. Yes, we can say, in hindsight, it's easier to say, what a terrible choice. But ultimately, it really seems just a bad move all around. Even if they were trying to appease their customers by giving them another option to purchase books, there's no reason to help a competitor, especially that directly. They should have just taken their time to get their website together and move on with it. It reminds me of that old saying, why let them take my business when I can give it to them instead? Then we move on to the issue of ebooks. Big Jeff, again, came in strong with the Kindle in 2007. A brilliant device to read digital books on, where you can store multiple books, take it with you, and you don't have to carry around a lot of big, heavy physical books. This escalated a massive shift into the purchase and use of ebooks over physical books. Borders had a lot of trouble with this. They finally opened their bookstore in 2010. This was 3 years after the Kindle came out, and a year after Barnes & Noble released their competitor to the Kindle called the Nook. However, Borders never actually created their own e-reader. So their ebooks that they were selling through their store were only compatible with unpopular and obscure devices like the Kobo and the Cruise, which no one has ever heard of, probably for good reason. Borders also continued to open more and more locations throughout all of this, despite the massive shift to online shopping, especially for physical and digital books. Really doesn't make any sense at all, especially when we get to the last and most comical point, which is that Borders throughout the 90s was investing heavily in CDs. They thought that CDs were going to be the next big thing, and they thought it was going to be a great addition to their business. This, again, in hindsight, seems like a bad choice. I think they should have known better at the time as well. If books were shifting to be sold online and ebooks were created, it doesn't make any sense why Borders would switch to another analog physical media product like CDs. Makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever. And that is why when Apple released the iPod in 2001, Borders had to scramble to get rid of all these CDs. The iPod greatly increased digital music sales, taking a lot of the sales away from physical copies. And this left Borders with far too much space and too many stores. And we all know that the worst thing you can have in a retail store is dead space that you're not making money off of. It really was just one bad move after another for Borders, and that is why they took their last breath in 2011. They first got destroyed by Jeff Bezos with Amazon, then they got destroyed by Apple with the iPod. It was just unbelievable. They were taking knockout punch after knockout punch. They ultimately didn't even have to reach this fate. They could easily have taken the path of Barnes & Noble, the company that is thought to have taken around half of their retail sales. The main reason that Barnes & Noble was able to take so much of the retail sales is because they knew to adapt to the market and innovate to accommodate consumers' demand. They created the Nook in 2009 to directly compete with Amazon's Kindle, as previously mentioned. This was only 2 years after Amazon released their e-reader. They fully developed and released their own. By 2010, The Nook helped Barnes & Noble take roughly 25% of Amazon's market share in ebooks, it is thought. And by 2011, Barnes & Noble had roughly 7% of the market share of all tablets, not just e-readers, which is wildly impressive, especially with how quickly they were able to develop the Nook and get it to market. In addition to all of this, Borders really didn't have to close because Barnes & Noble has been able to maintain the majority of their physical stores, their physical retail stores, despite having a decreasing revenue year over year. This is because there's still a great demand for physical books. Yes, Barnes & Noble's revenue is down, but the number of independent bookstores has risen every year except one since 2009, when the Nook was released, showing that there really is still a big demand for physical books. All of that being said, it's unfortunate that Borders met this fate, but it's quite funny that they kept making all the wrong choices at all the wrong times. Back to you, me. That's all for this little piggy. I hope you enjoyed the market this time, and we'll see you next time on episode 2.